Welcome everyone. Bienvenidos a todos. We'll get started in a few minutes. We'll give folks a few more minutes to come on in. Welcome everyone. Started in 1 minute. All right. I'm gonna share my screen in just a second. And we'll get started here with directions for interpretation. One moment. All right, Manny, go ahead and share the directions with folks.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Para interpretación en español, si fijan ahí en la pantalla, pueden oprimir el logotipo del globo y escogen el idioma que quieren oír, que quieren escuchar. En este caso es el español. Y aquí se puede ver cada instrucción. El primero es por tableta o el iPad, la segunda es por computadora y la tercera es la forma de hacerlo por medio del teléfono. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you, Manny. I will give those instructions in English. It's a bilingual meeting, so if you're not fully bilingual in both languages, you're certainly going to want to pick a language. If you're on a tablet, you can click the More button where you see the 3 little dots. And then if you're on a computer, you can click on the globe icon and click on the language of your choice as well. So make sure to click on a language that you'll be participating in this meeting if you're not fully bilingual in both languages as well. So at this time, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. I'm going to transition to let Manny, who gave the instructions in the interpreter box. So bear with me for 1 second. All right. You should be in there now. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, and welcome. We've got quite a full agenda today, so I'll take a moment to share with you all what to expect in today's conversation. Sharing my screen again.
My apologies, but I do not see myself in the interpreting box yet.
Okay, let me try that one more time. Apologize here. Update. All right, there you are, Manny. You should be in there now. Okay, you should all be able to view my screen. Take a moment to review the agenda for today. Welcome, everyone. We are going to have a presentation from Craig with the California Air Resources Board, who's going to give an update on the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule. And then we have a really special guest today, Marissa Brown, who is with the Green Lighting Institute, who will be giving a presentation about opportunities for advocacy around the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule as well. We'll also watch a short video presentation about a proposed rule update regarding home and business furnaces. And then we will have a discussion. It's really a continuance of a discussion we had back in April, specifically around the indirect source strategies and what are those potential strategies currently in discussion. Also, as a special treat, you all will be able to see one video that we've been able to produce so far from the community testimonies that many of you participated back in May during our in-person session. So you'll get to take a look at one video that we've been able to produce so far from those testimonies. And we're planning on producing more videos. This is the one that we've produced so far. Then we'll have opportunity for public comments, closing remarks, and then we'll call it a night. So it's a quite busy agenda, but I'm confident we can get through it. And if we don't get through everything today, we can certainly continue the conversation the next time we meet as well. So with that, I'm actually going to be turning it over to Craig from the California Air Resources Board. He will be sharing a presentation with us. And his presentation on the screen will be in English, but we will drop in the chat box the presentation. The same presentation, we'll drop in the Spanish translated version of his presentation in the chat box itself, so that if you'd like, you can follow along as well. So at this time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Craig.
Great, thank you, Shalem. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me see if we can do this. Can everybody see? Can everybody see the presentation okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, yeah, so good evening, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to give an update on the Advanced Clean Fleets Regulation. My name is Craig During. I'm the manager that oversaw the regulation development and now the implementation side of things. So I'm also joined today by one of my colleagues, Albertina Ankuma. So she's available to answer any questions that you guys might have. But let me walk you through. So first, I want to talk a little bit about, provide some background information to set the stage. We'll get into the regulation requirements, and then I'll give you an update on what we're currently doing and where we're at in the process. So this is a busy slide, a lot of information on here. I get that, but it's important. So we all know that reducing air pollution is critical to protect the health of all Californians. Most of the air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions in California does come from the transportation sector, with medium and heavy duty trucks being among the highest emitters. As you may or may not be aware, trucks can come in many different configurations and sizes, and there are nearly 2 million trucks that are operating in California today. However, Class 7 and 8 tractors have a disproportionate share of the emissions, burdening communities living near freight hubs and warehouses. As shown in the blue slice on the graphs, these tractors only account for about 12% of the total population, but they represent about half of the total daily NOx emissions. So to address this, the state has set targets to reduce air pollution and carbon emissions with a goal of carbon neutrality by 2045. So the board has taken many steps to reduce emissions from medium and heavy duty vehicles. The zero emission transition began with regulations on transit buses in 2018 and airport shuttle buses in 2019. In 2020 and 2021, the board adopted 3 major regulations. The Advanced Clean Trucks Regulation will ensure the supply of zero-emission trucks from all major truck manufacturers. I'll talk about that more in just a minute. The heavy-duty omnibus regulation will reduce criteria pollutant emissions from internal combustion engines that are sold in California, and the heavy-duty inspection and maintenance program, which is also known as the Clean Truck Check program, will ensure that the combustion engines that are on the road and their emission control systems are maintained and repaired timely. The Advanced Clean Fleets regulation, highlighted in the red box, is the next step to drive commercialization of zero-emission vehicles in fleets that are best suited to lead the way. And then finally, last September, the board adopted the state implementation plan that does include a new zero-emission truck measure, which emphasizes that more is still needed to achieve federal attainment standards. So where are we at? When looking at truck availability, zero-emission truck availability, as of June 2024, there are 266 ZEV models available in all weight classes that have been certified for sale in California. This is partly due to the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation, and I want to talk about this because this is important. The Advanced Clean Trucks regulation, approved in 2020, ensures that the supply of available zero-emission vehicles will continue to grow in the upcoming years. It requires manufacturers to sell zero-emission vehicles as a growing percentage of sales in all vehicle classes starting in 2024. And we're not alone. California is not alone. 10 other states have joined California in the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation, with the most recent partners being Colorado and Maryland. Other states are actively considering the regulation as well. So as part of this rulemaking, the board's resolution set zero-emission targets for future fleet requirements, which are as follows: 100% zero-emission drayage, last mile delivery, and public fleets by 2035, 100% zero-emission buses, utility fleets, and refuse trucks by 2040, and 100% zero-emission everywhere feasible by 2045. These targets were considered when developing the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. So let me talk about this regulation. It is a complex regulation, but I'll try and break it down into its main components. So the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation has fundamentally four components. First is a 100% zero
Oye,
emission.
¿te metiste ahí donde te dije, donde te puse el círculo? A ver, contéstame eso.
One second, it sounds like we might have someone talking right now. Let me just look there. 1 second.
No problem.
Make sure everybody's on mute. All right, Craig, go ahead and, take it back.
You. Yeah, no worries. So first is the 100% zero emission vehicle sales requirement. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then there's 3 fleet components with specific requirements on drayage trucks, on state and local government fleets, and on high priority fleets. So let's start with the sales requirement. On the manufacturer side, ACF represents a first of its kind requirement for medium and heavy duty vehicles, establishing an end to internal combustion engine sales by 2035. So per board direction, by 2036. But per board direction, beginning in 2036, all medium and heavy duty vehicles sold into California must be zero emission. This piece of the rule is a key element for meeting the state's carbon neutrality targets and the goals laid out by the governor's executive order. This requirement also sends a clear signal to the trucking market, including truck manufacturers, fleets, infrastructure providers, service technicians, and local governments. So the next component I'll talk about is the high priority and federal fleet component of the regulation. This portion of the regulation applies to well-capitalized businesses that are well suited for electrification. These requirements apply to any fleet with 50 or more vehicles under common ownership and control, or any fleet with greater than 50 million in annual revenue. It also applies to federal government fleets. There are additional requirements to brokers and motor carriers to ensure that they are hiring compliant fleets. So, in addition to the typical Class 2B through 8 vehicles, Class 2B would be anything that's greater than 8,500 pounds GVWR. So basically an F-250, right? An F-250 or larger. This requirement would also apply to off-road yard tractors and light-duty delivery vehicles, such as those operated by the Postal Service. And I just want to point out that this part of the regulation does not affect small fleets. So if you don't own more than 50 trucks, if you're not a large company that grosses 50 million in annual revenue, this regulation does not apply to you. But if it does, here's what you need to do. So the default option for high priority fleets is to follow the model year schedule, which is shown here. With exceptions explained in the enforcement notice, and I'll talk about the enforcement notice soon, fleet owners had to report which trucks will be part of their California fleet by January 1st of this year. From now on, all new additions to the California fleet must be zero emissions or near zero emissions, or what we call an NZEV. And the definition of an NZEV is a plug-in hybrid, which can achieve a minimum all-electric range. So trucks that have reached the end of their useful life must then be removed from the California fleet. And just to provide an example of how this might work, this slide shows the schedule to remove legacy trucks based on the age of the engine. So in this example, a 2010 model year engine can operate until 2028, and newer engines will have additional time. High mileage vehicles, like tractors, are guaranteed a minimum of 13 years, but would need to be removed from the fleet once they reach 800,000 miles or 18 years, whichever occurs first. So broadly, this structure ensures a phased-in over time approach to zero-emission vehicles, but it's based on the age of the vehicles in the company's fleet today. There is an optional pathway, compliance pathway for high-priority fleets, and we call it the optional ZEV milestone option, and I'll talk about that now. So this option may offer a more flexible approach and is available to high-priority fleets as well as state and local governments. Under this option, a certain portion of the fleet needs to be composed of zero or near zero emission vehicles. I'm still getting a little bit of feedback here. As seen in the table, the requirements are more aggressive for well-suited vehicles listed in Group 1 and delayed for more specialized longer distance vehicles in Groups 2 and Group 3. This phase-in happens gradually over the next 2 decades. As long as the ZEV milestones are met, fleet owners have considerable flexibility with the rest of their vehicles. Fleets can prioritize which vehicles to electrify and can purchase combustion-powered engines as long as they meet the overall phase-in requirement. Any ZEV truck in the fleet can count towards the ZEV requirements, meaning a ZEV from any group can be applied toward the total ZEV count. Now, obviously, individual fleet requirements will vary based on their fleet composition. By the way, we do have a fleet calculator on our website. So if you want to know whether you're using the model year or you want to use the ZEV milestone, you can actually enter your truck information by model year, and it will identify when your zero emission requirements are needed, right? So it'll tell you both for the model year schedule as well as the ZEV the optional ZEV milestone phase-in. But I do want to provide an example of this phase-in option because it's pretty cool. So this slide illustrates how the ZEV milestone schedule is applied to a mixed fleet of 100 vehicles. Here we have 60 Group 1 vehicles, 20 Group 2 vehicles, and 20 Group 3 vehicles. The bottom row on the bottom row, we can see that the number of ZEVs is required for each year. So for 2024, for 2025, the fleet would need to have 6 ZEVs total. So 6 ZEVs for 2025. This is calculated by taking the 20 Group 1 trucks that are in the fleet, multiplying it by 10%, which gives you 6. So again, in 2025, the fleet would need to have 6 ZEVs. Looking forward to 2029, the fleet would need to have 17 ZEVs. And this is done by using 2 calculations. One, we have to take the 60 Group 1 vehicles, multiply that by 25%. That will give you 15 zero-emission vehicles that are required. And then for Group 2, that requirement is 10%. So the 20 Group 2 vehicles would be multiplied by 10%, which would give you 2 more. So the total would be 17. Again, any vehicle in the fleet could be applied to this total. Any vehicle that has a gross vehicle weight rating greater than 8,500 pounds, right? So any Class 2 and above vehicle would qualify, if it's a ZEV, would qualify for this requirement. Yeah. So the next component I want to talk about is the drayage requirement. This requirement applies to tractors operating at the state seaports and rail yards. This requirement will create a fully zero-emission drayage fleet by 2035. This requirement is not based on fleet size. Rather, it affects all trucks that visit ports or rail yards. So to conduct drayage operations in California, trucks must be registered in the CARB online reporting system. Its acronym is Truckers. So our Truckers reporting system. Legacy combustion powered trucks that were reported before December 31st would be able to remain in drayage service until the end of their minimum useful life, as long as they visit a California seaport or intermodal rail yard annually. Except as explained in the enforcement notice, and I'll talk about that in a minute, only zero-emission trucks can be added to the registration system now. Starting in 2025, legacy trucks that exceed their useful life must be removed from drayage service. All right, and then the last component of the regulation is the state and local government requirements. So for state and local government fleets, the default option is the zero-emission purchase requirement, which aligns with the public fleet purchasing cycles. So starting in 2024, 50% of purchases must be zero emissions. That means that the other half can be combustion powered until 2027. And like the high priority fleet requirements I talked about earlier, near zero emission vehicles or NZEVs can be purchased equally to full zero emission vehicles to provide more flexibility. And then I also want to point out that agencies that are in designated counties, which you can see as the shaded area on the map here, will remain exempt from the zero emission purchase requirement until 2027. This exemption has been also granted to small divisions that have 10 or fewer vehicles. So starting in 2027, all purchases would need to be zero emission or near zero emission vehicles. One thing to point out in this structure, if no vehicles are being purchased, then no action is required. This means the fleets can continue to operate their vehicles as long as they wish. And the reporting deadline for state and local governments was April 1st of 2024. However, the reporting system is still open, and we're encouraging fleets to go in and report their vehicles if they haven't yet done so. All right, so the ACF regulation does contain a number of provisions that a fleet owner may utilize to assist them in meeting the compliance requirements. These provisions address a variety of circumstances, including zero-emission vehicle availability, vehicles operated for less than 1,000 miles per year, delays in infrastructure, vehicles involved in accidents, vehicles under mutual aid agreements. The list goes on and on, waste and wastewater fleets and more. So more detailed information on each one of these provisions is available on our website. We've got fact sheets and we've got Q&As that can help provide more information on these provisions. So in summary, the regulation is phased in over the course of the next 2 decades, and all combustion-powered vehicles are guaranteed their full useful life. This transition will not happen overnight. Both public fleets and high-priority fleets can use the ZEV milestone option and have the flexibility to purchase near-zero emission vehicles with an all-electric range. Lastly, the regulation includes numerous provisions to ensure the fleet owner would not be out of compliance for situations outside of their control. They include vehicle delivery delays, infrastructure delays, accidents, and other unforeseen events. Likewise, the regulation allows for the purchase of combustion-powered vehicles if a zero-emission vehicle is not available or it does not meet the fleet's duty cycle needs. And finally, the truckers reporting system is open and accepting fleet information from all affected entities. All right, so I mentioned the enforcement notice. Let me talk about that real quick. On December 28th of last year, CARB released an enforcement notice regarding the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. The enforcement notice is posted on the Advanced Clean Fleets website. The enforcement notice indicates that CARB will not enforce the ACF measure until the US EPA grants the preemption waiver or indicates the waiver is unnecessary. During this time, fleets are encouraged to report and comply while awaiting EPA action. Additionally, extensions and exemptions are still being accepted and reviewed. Once the waiver is granted, compliance will be expected. So let me just wrap this up by talking about where we're at and what we're doing for implementation. So infrastructure is a big deal, and let me talk about that real quick. Infrastructure is critical to successfully transition California's fleets to zero emission technology. The governor recently announced a joint agency statement of intent between California's partner agencies. This statement of intent outlines the state's shared approach to ensure there is enough electricity and hydrogen supply, and there are enough fueling stations to serve the growing zero-emission transportation market. Among the shared principles, one is ensuring that equity, right? Equity is a consideration in the decision-making process. Two, ensuring there is robust and frequent communication between agencies and the sharing of data and analysis where feasible. And then lastly, ensuring joint stakeholder engagement and coordination of planning and funding programs among all these agencies. And I'll add real quick, we currently underway is a stakeholder-based truck regulation implementation group. We call it TRIG, Truck Regulation Implementation Group, with infrastructure identified as one of the 4 ACF implementation subcommittees. So we are actively engaging with stakeholders on this topic, and we're actively pursuing solutions for the infrastructure. So to wrap things up, guys, I know I'm going over time here. All rulemaking documents, fact sheets, and frequently asked questions and contact information for ACF can be found on our website. You will also be able to access information regarding all meetings, past meetings and upcoming meetings, including public workshops, materials, recordings, and any information about our truck regulation implementation group, the TRIG meetings I talked about. For questions regarding ACF specifically, you can email us at zevfleet@arb.ca.gov, or you can call the hotline number that's listed on the slide. And then, of course, for more general information, you can visit our ZEV Truck Stop website to get updates on incentives and in funding, and more information on the truck market itself. All right, Shalem, I'm gonna pass it back to you because that is it for my presentation.
Thank you so much, Craig. That was incredibly helpful information for us. And this particular body, the International Border Community Steering Committee, in its Community Emission Reduction Program, CERP, actually supports ACF and sees it as a really important component in terms of making sure that air quality improves here in the international border communities. We have a couple of really great questions in the chat box that I'm going to read out loud to make sure that they get interpreted into Spanish as well. The first question is from Stan. He asks, do those vehicles get scrapped, or are they just going to be passed on to another country or state?
Yeah, so the Advanced Clean Fleets Regulation does not have a scrap requirement. It just says that when you replace a vehicle or add a vehicle to your fleet, it has to be zero emission. What you do with the old vehicle is up to you. Obviously, you can sell it to maybe a small fleet that is not subject to the ACF requirement, or you can sell it out of state or but yeah, we do not have a scrap requirement.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that information, Craig. You know, being an international border community, many of the trucks, right, that are traveling into Otay Mesa and San Isidro are actually kind of cross-border heavy duty vehicles. And so we have actually a really great question from Olga here. It says, as a border town community in San Isidro, how will this be enforced to our Mexican fleet trucks crossing daily in our Otay Mesa and Tijuana borders?
Yeah, great question. So, you know, this regulation does have a reporting requirement. So any trucks entering the state of California would need to be reported into our reporting system so that we know which trucks are coming in. And then if a fleet decides not to report and they decide to come into the state anyway, our enforcement team does have programs in place. They have license plate readers. They have inspection, spot inspections. There are some tools that we have available to monitor those trucks that are coming in and out of the state. But most importantly, it's the registration system, and then the eyes on the street watching those vehicles that are coming in and out of the state.
So what I'm hearing, Craig, is that any vehicle operating within the state of California will need to be in compliance with the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule.
Well, so that's a good point. So if you're affected by this regulation, and so not all fleets are affected by this. So if you're a smaller fleet, yeah, you may not have any requirements at all. So that's why you have to report. So we know which trucks are affected and which ones are not, and that's why we have our enforcement team out there monitoring those trucks that come in. And if we see it and it's not in our system, then we might ask some questions, right?
Thank you. I see Stan has a follow-up comment here in the chat box. So I'll read it out loud to make sure it's interpreted. Scrapping should have been a requirement. We are just sending our high polluting trucks to another community that does not have as many protections as we do. Let's see, when is, you know, where is the equity in that? Many will end up just across the border with the pollution still coming back into the San Isidro area. Thank you for sharing that, Stan. Definitely could see that as a potential here. And then we actually have a question from Marissa, who says, is there any more current update on the granting of the US EPA waiver?
Yeah, so we know that the US EPA, so we sent our request over last year. It was December of last year when we sent our request in. So they've had it for a while now. It's my understanding that they are they're either considering it now or they're about to consider it shortly. I don't know. I have to look at their website just like you have to look at their website. But they would make a formal announcement once they would open up the consideration of the Advanced Clean Fleets waiver. So I can't answer that question because I'm as pretty much in the dark as you are. But everything is everything has been filed, and we're just waiting for their review and approval.
Great, and I see Olga with your hand up. Go ahead, Olga.
Hi, good afternoon. So I live in San Isidro, which I'm like close to the Otay Mesa and the Tijuana border. My question is, if it's appropriate to ask, how would the Mexican side know about the new restrictions or regulations for the fleet service coming into this side? How would the Mexican side know? Because since we live in San Isidro, we get a lot of pollution, the smoke and all that. So I'm like super interested on finding out how would the Mexican side know what the requirements are on this side once they cross and what to expect, so they can start fixing their fleets as they're crossing over. I mean, if it's possible to know, just kind of want to know how would they know? How does the U.S. send, or whoever is in charge of doing this, how would they know on the other side?
Yeah, I can start with a response, and then maybe Shalem, if you have more to add. But so we do have an outreach team at CARB, and we're constantly reaching out. We have events that we hold in Otay Mesa and other border communities, and we're constantly providing some providing information on a regular basis, including one-stop events. We also just hired a contractor to do a tremendous amount of outreach for this regulation, and I believe part of that is going to the border communities, going to Mexico, going to the other states, and going beyond just California. But that's as far as what CARB is looking at, those are some of the key things. I don't know if there's anything else on the San Diego side.
It's a really great question in terms of outreach that's necessary, right? With folks who are operating fleets on both sides of the border as well. And I think that's something that we certainly, as a community steering committee, should continue to discuss, and also think of ways in which this community could also help support in that outreach and education as well. I'm going to read a couple notes on the chat box, and then go to Mariela and David, and then we'll transition to our next speaker, who will actually be continuing the conversation on this issue itself, Marissa Brown with the Green Lining Institute. So I'll read these next two posts, and then I'll go to Mariela and then David, and then we'll transition to the next presentation. So David says in the chat box, there is also a lot of coordination going on between agencies on both sides of the border, elevated by the San Diego Air Resources Board members, Nora Vargas and Diane Takforian. And then there was a response by Albertina to Stan's comment, and they say, we do have some ways to mitigate that for the vehicle to be considered removed from the California fleet. Vehicles that are still in the California fleet that have not been destroyed, scrapped, sold out of the fleet, or transferred, sorry, I'm losing my words here, out of the state, would need to be included, including vehicles registered as non-operational. It would need to be registered as non-revivable, junked, or dismantled to be considered removed from the California fleet. So thanks for sharing that. We're going to go to Mariela from Sandag, and then we'll go to David.
Hi, thank you, Shalem. Good afternoon, everybody. And I just wanted to chime in a little bit on the question that Olga asked. On top of what Craig said, Sandag has been doing a lot of outreach with different members of the partner agencies in Mexico. In fact, with Caltrans leading the effort, we are doing an addendum to the border master plan to incorporate zero-emission infrastructure strategies. And the government of Baja California is one of the stakeholders, the city of Tijuana, all the different levels of government in Mexico are partaking into this initiative. So we are doing a lot of outreach. Sandag, Caltrans, and other agencies, including ICTC in Imperial County, also produced a white paper, Zero Emission Transition Truck white paper, where we touch on a lot of the opportunities and challenges with the new regulation. So I'll be happy to reshare that link if anybody's interested in like diving into these issues and some things that we found out. And in fact, last month, myself and other people from our agency and Caltrans did a briefing for the congressional delegation in Washington, D.C. about this very same issue. So we are very active. We have very fluid conversation with all different stakeholders. Industry on the Mexico side of the border is very well aware of what is going on. And we're just, trying to bridge the issues that are going on. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariela. David.
And just a quick follow-up to Mariela. So yes, there's been a lot of outreach done. I know that around March of 2023, there were specific workshops that CARB staff helped to put together to inform of the regulation coming. So yeah, it's awesome to see our local agency step up to continue that work.
Thank you, David. With that, don't worry. This is still going to be a conversation we're going to have. So I'm going to actually transition to Marissa Brown from the Green Lining Institute, who will be continuing the discussion around the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule, kind of getting us continuing where Craig left off in his presentation. Marissa?
Great, thank you so much. I'll just share my screen very briefly. All right, can folks see my screen? Okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Please let me know if I'm going too fast and if you need me to slow down. The purpose of my presentation is to introduce myself and Green Lining and to do some info sharing and also to garner some discussion on transportation equity regarding transitioning medium and heavy duty vehicles like trucks or buses to zero emissions, and like how we can build more cross-state collaboration around environmental justice on this topic. So just briefly, my name is Marissa Brown. I'm currently based in Oakland, California on unceded land of the Ohlone people, but I've spent most of my life in South Central Los Angeles. As one of Green Lining's transportation equity program managers, my work focuses on the medium and heavy duty sector policy research and development, equitable implementation, and an engagement strategy for Green Lining in this sector. So my work continues to think about how to get these vehicles to zero emissions, how to support equitable implementation of these zero emission policies, while also ensuring the reliability of the multimodal freight industry, because a lot of California's business is reliant on these trucks. So I partook heavily in the advocacy for the passage of CARB's Advanced Clean Fleets, which is what the regulation that Craig just presented on. And I was representing Green Lining's partners in their environmental justice and health perspectives. This advocacy included testifying at hearings. So I'm sure Craig heard me testify there at some of the hearings. This advocacy also included developing relationships with CARB staff and board to elevate the needs of our partners, as well as other public stakeholders. And so as a leader in the Advanced Clean Fleets Coalition, which is a coalition that I will talk about a little bit later in the presentation, I now co-lead this adjacent zero emission trucks equity work group. And so this group also has authored other advocacy letters and efforts, such as a letter we sent to the California Transportation Commission on its SB 671 Clean Freight Corridor Efficiency Assessment. And so we met with CTC staff to implement various changes to that draft before it was voted on by commissioners. And just for folks, if you haven't heard about the Clean Freight Corridor Efficiency Assessment, it was basically this large study that the state did to outline to legislators where the most important freight corridors are in the state to keep freight going as we are electrifying. And as you can imagine, these stretches of highway or corridors run through a lot of disadvantaged communities. So it was important to have some advocacy around that. I've also been engaging with the California Transportation Commission on their Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. That's one of the programs that they offer. And we work to update that program to be more equitable and reduce the amount of money that gets spent on freeway widening projects. Freeway widening in California has been pretty harmful to various disadvantaged communities and encouraging displacement and encouraging congestion in traffic and increased pollution. So I continually engage with CARB on some of their other programs like HVIP, which is the Hybrid and Zero Emission Truck and Bus Voucher Incentive Project. Part of my engagement strategy and like comments there have been like making sure that resources and services also get to smaller fleets who have just greater barriers to transitioning to zero emission trucks, and then also making sure large school districts are also getting resources for transitioning to buses. I also serve on CARB's Truck Regulation Implementation Group, which Craig also mentioned. That group is a panel, so it represents both public and private stakeholders, and we give feedback to CARB on how best to do outreach for the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. So of all that I've said, I hope you take away that I'm very heavily steeped in a lot of the current medium and heavy duty work that pertains to trucks and buses. And if you're not familiar, so the Greenlining Institute, the organization that I represent, is a research and public policy nonprofit that has been advocating for racial equity and economic justice for 30 years. So we are fighting to pass policy solutions and implement practices to build a future where communities of color can build wealth, live in healthy places filled with economic opportunity, and will be ready to meet the challenges posed by climate change. And why is this racial equity work necessary? As I'm sure you all know and are familiar with, I will probably be preaching to the choir here, but I really like to share these slides. So this slide has 3 maps, all of Oakland, where I'm currently based. The first is the 1937 redlining map, where communities of color were segregated and denied investment. The middle is a 2018 map of the communities who suffer most from poverty and pollution. And the last map of 2021 shows communities with the most number of COVID cases. Clearly, there is a thread of connection between these maps. These disproportionate impacts are a result of how our legacy of racial disparities continues to be embedded into our structural and institutional policies. And while these maps are of Oakland, many different cities across California and across the US were intentionally redlined. And this legacy lives on today when we start to try to understand exposure to deadly transportation pollution from trucks and lack of mobility options like access to transit or walkability or bikeability. And this is why Greenlining does our work. So we do this through the practice of greenlining. And what does that mean? Which we define as the affirmative and proactive practices of providing economic opportunities to communities of color. We do this across a number of policy areas, which includes clean transportation and clean mobility, which I work on. We also work on clean energy and building decarbonization, climate adaptation and resilience, economic equity, and capacity building. So taking us back to the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation, I won't walk through the regulation because Craig just did so, but I will say from the advocacy standpoint, this regulation was really important because CARB projected that the ACF regulation will cumulatively reduce statewide emissions of really toxic pollution such as nitrogen oxides and fine particulate matter, which historically redlined communities and communities of color have been disproportionately exposed to at higher rates. And so this leads to vast outbreaks of respiratory illness like asthma and lung cancer. And they also project that this regulation will reduce greenhouse gases from 2024 to 2050. So it's really impactful for climate change. So as you heard Craig mention, the US EPA has to essentially issue a waiver, a preemption waiver to CARB saying it's okay to enforce this regulation, or say that like the waiver is not necessary at all. And so some of the advocacy, there's been advocacy efforts such as letter writing to the US EPA, that's the US Environmental Protection Agency, urging them to sign the waiver for CARB to be able to officially enforce this ACF regulation. And these are just two letters that I wanted to share with you. I'll drop the first one in the chat. Oh, I actually don't know if I can see the chat. I think I'll have to come back, or can someone orient me how to see the chat?
Yeah, it should be on the right-hand panel.
Oh, there
Or
we
you
go.
can click on more, and then I think click on like chat.
Oh, okay, there we go. So here's the first letter. This was like a national effort, so you'll see some signees are like from New Jersey or New York. And then here's a PDF of the second letter. And this second letter was more California-based for organizations who do environmental justice work. So now on to talk about the equity work group that I mentioned earlier and the Advanced Clean Fleets Coalition that I also mentioned earlier. A bit of background here. So this work group developed as a working group of the Advanced Clean Fleets Coalition. So the Advanced Clean Fleets Coalition was an advocacy group comprised of like community-based organizations, NGOs, labor, utility partners, business, tech, and it was all centered around advocacy for CARB to pass the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. And as we were progressing with our advocacy to get that regulation passed, I noticed that we needed more of an equity-focused working group within the coalition to really have the expertise and the focus to discuss certain equity issues pertaining to this regulation. And so that's how the coalition ended up with an equity working group. And so now with the ACF being approved by the board, but not yet approved essentially by the US EPA, we've shifted focus to ensuring the equitable and robust implementation of medium and heavy duty zero emission policies and infrastructure. And so it's like a really great opportunity and convening of equity, labor, and just like other allied partners to have more of a discourse about how these medium and heavy duty transportation plans, policies, and implementation efforts are working and how we're progressing. And just when we have convened, groups have included Power Switch, Environmental Health Coalition, Blue Green Alliance, People's Collective, SEHA, IBEW, and NRDC. Those are some of the groups who have participated. And so this working group took lead on developing a joint vision statement, which I will also drop in the chat for you to open and kind of like peruse, and I'll talk through it. There's a link there. Please let me know. It should be available for everyone to access, but let me know if you can't access that. And also my apologies that the statement is not translated. I will work with my coalition to get this translated. But just to talk a little bit more through it, just to talk a little bit more through it. So this is a breathing document, which means like at any point we can go back and like edit this. Oops, sorry. This is something that we want to work on as long as we're a coalition. And so
Marissa?
we've just, oh, go ahead.
We got a request from the interpreter if you could slow down just a little bit. Thank
Yes,
you.
I figured. So this joint vision statement is a breathing document, meaning like it's not set in stone. This is something that we're going to continue to work on. We've composed it to just put to paper our values and how we jointly envision the future as it relates to transitioning trucks in our communities to zero emissions. In that, we envision a future where the benefits of clean transportation systems and zero emission vehicles are equitably shared among all communities. And so what you see on the screen here are just 3 out of 6 of our like core pillars that you will see in the actual document. So the core pillars in the document are equity of economic opportunity and working on making sure that workers are not left behind in this transition. Number 2 is equitable and just collaborative partnerships, making sure that we're committed to authentically collaborating with community leaders, advocacy groups, and policymakers. Number 3 is holistic improvements for truck route communities. So we've talked a lot about like how that tailpipe pollution is not the only negative impact facing truck route communities. There's road deterioration, there's the actual truck traffic itself, the noise, the vibration, the safety concerns associated with the truck traffic as well. So there's just other issues surrounding this transition. Number 4 is seamless accessibility. Our work group envisions that charging infrastructure deployment is user-friendly and that the drivers themselves can charge their vehicles conveniently and confidently. Number 5 is no downstream effects for environmental justice communities, meaning that like with the production of perhaps zero emission fuels like hydrogen, that there's no downstream impacts to environmental justice communities. And then lastly, number 6 is technological innovation, ensuring that as we transition to zero emission vehicles, there aren't increased blackouts due to just the grid being destabilized. So making sure that there is grid sustainability and resilience. So lastly, moving on, I really just wanted to have more of a conversation around this, and just to go back a little bit to the previous slide, is to introduce myself, the work that I've been doing, and connect to your community, and to get your thoughts like on this vision statement, but also give you the space to like introduce yourselves and unmute and like talk about like what's coming up in your community in terms of trucks and buses and concerns, and what's working in this transition and like what's not working. And I think this is really important because we really need to start thinking through how across California, our environmental justice communities can be in lockstep and continue to connect, so we can start to form a strong cross-California collaborative and like not move in silos when it comes to this medium and heavy duty work. I've read through the SERPs and the camps, and I know that like truck traffic, truck idling, expanding industry and warehouses, like those are issues across the state. And I just bring this up because it's really about needing to be more strategic to getting to community-led resolutions and solutions, and giving the community the power and the capacity to find solutions. And that's important because interacting with industry, industry opposition is very united and very strong from participating in the outreach panel at CARB. Industry is like very frustrated about having to comply to this regulation. Just for full transparency, there's always just like moans about having to comply, and it's like this regulation is very impactful to communities where I come from and from where you come from, that I work to uplift and protect. And this regulation has not yet been approved, essentially. So wanted to have more of a discussion. And so here are some of the discussion questions that I came up with, but happy to take whatever's popping up for you all. And so I guess I'll just read these out loud and give y'all space to respond. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great.
Okay. What issues are occurring for the International Border Steering Committee and community regarding zero emission trucks and infrastructure? What is the current progress of the AB 617 San Diego Community SERP and air pollution reduction from fossil fuel trucks? What are your initial reactions or thoughts to the joint vision statement? And then lastly, what are your thoughts on opportunities for info sharing or advocacy collaboration?
Thank you so much, Marissa. I can probably attempt to answer question number 2. I know that Kathy is on the line as well and could probably support in answering number 2 of this question. But also, I think anyone on this call tonight can certainly chime in on any or all of these questions. But love to hear from folks either regarding these questions, or if you have a question for Marissa as well. Folks are collecting their thoughts, Marissa. I'm going to attempt to answer question number 2 a little bit, but also anyone with more information can certainly chime in. In terms of the International Border Community Emission Reduction Program, SERP, that was recently approved by the CSC in December of 2023, and then approved by the San Diego Air Pollution Control District's board in January of 2024. And then it's actually in the process of going to the California Air Resources Board, CARB's board, I think either this month or next month, and maybe Femi could give us a precise date to be approved by CARB's board. So we've just kind of transitioned over from development of the SERP to now implementation. But having said that, there is another community, the Portside community, which includes the communities of Barrio Logan, Sherman Heights, West National City, Logan Heights, that has had their SERP in progress the past 3 years in terms of implementation. And there's been a number of, in the incentive side of things, incentives around, and also even though International Border hasn't had their SERP, our incentives team has been working hard to share information around opportunities to receive grant funding for transition of fleets. And I believe there's also a pilot project currently at the port as well. And Kathy, if you're here, if you don't mind speaking more about that.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Shalem is correct that we are implementing the SERPs for both Portside and International Border communities at this point. We have a pretty robust incentive program. We've been awarded sneak previewing for the Portside subcommittee. We've been awarded about $88 million in funding. We've allocated about half of that so far to projects to reduce emissions in those in San Diego in general, and particularly in those communities. I would say that with regard to your first point, the issues that are occurring for zero emission trucks and infrastructure are the lack of available infrastructure. We're working on that, but it is a slow process. And then making trucks available that are affordable to the trucking companies and that serve the purposes that need to without impacting their how they do business in the region, I think would be the two big ones. But I would love to hear from the rest of the community about what else are their priorities.
Feel free to speak up or put a comment or question in the chat box as well. I know both of these presentations contained a lot of information, quite dense, but really important information as well. If it's okay, Marissa, I have a question in terms of the advocacy piece. I was curious, like, it sounds like you've all been doing a lot of mobilizing to communicate to the EPA that there are many communities in support of the EPA granting this waiver to the California Air Resources Board so that they're able to move forward with implementing the Advanced Clean Fleets rule. Is there concern that the EPA won't grant the waiver? And I'm just curious, kind of what is the political climate out there, and what is the importance of that mobilization and organizing that you've all been engaged in as well?
Yeah, there's definitely concern. First, I believe the previous regulations, so the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation, that is under lawsuit currently. And then I think there's a lot of worries with this presidential election and perhaps the transition of power that may set us back quite a bit. And so folks are really wanting a granting of the waiver before there is like a transition of power. So I would say the political climate is pretty chaotic, and there's a lot of worries that this may not be signed, but we're not entirely, we're also just in the dark as to like where the US EPA may land as well.
Yeah, thank you for that candid and insightful comment. I saw really quickly Nicolas Paul with your hand up. I don't know if you want to chime in, but the floor is yours if you'd like.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, Shalem. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Bueno. Thank you, Marissa, for the presentation. ACF is so important, and particularly in this part of San Diego. To the first question on there, in addition to ACF, I think there's some local efforts to address heavy duty truck traffic from warehousing in San Diego. And so there's this whole process going on right now where the Air District is convening these warehouse working groups to try to hash out specifics for an indirect source rule. And so I think as a fellow advocate, I think ACF is great in that it addresses kind of the heavy hitters in the region, right? The high priority fleets, the federal and state fleets, and the drayage trucks. But we have a lot of smaller warehouses in the community that will not be covered by ACF. And so I think there is opportunities to engage in efforts to try to get a really good indirect source rule throughout San Diego County to address heavy-duty truck traffic from different types of businesses in the region. And those warehouse working group meetings happen, I believe it's like the first Monday of each month. And they're open to the public.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nicolas. And maybe Kathy or Nick, if you all have the link to that working group where people can get more information and sign up, feel free to put that in the chat. If it's not readily accessible, I'll try to look for it and email it as well. Hopefully we'll be able to get to that conversation later in the meeting, Nicolas, specifically around indirect source strategies. So thank you for elevating that and how both ACF could work hand in hand with the strong indirect source rule at the local level. I have a question for folks on the CSC. Marissa brought up the action that different groups throughout the country, throughout the state are doing in terms of letter writing campaign to the EPA to share their support in granting a waiver to the California Air Resources Board. As I mentioned earlier, ACF is actually something that the International Border Community Steering Committee supports. It's one action in the SERP specifically that's called out in terms of supporting. And I'm just curious to know if folks would be interested in applying a similar strategy as a community steering committee in terms of providing a letter to the EPA that's written by the CSC, continuing to share this group's support for that. Thanks, Kathy, for popping that in the chat. Yeah. And what are folks' thoughts on that in terms of using that as a potential avenue to share your already existing support with the EPA specifically? All right, it's pretty quiet here.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering if maybe folks have already signed on to letters. Has anyone signed on to letters already as well?
Yeah, Nicholas is from the Environmental Health Coalition, and so I did see their logo and name on that. Nicholas put in the chat, I think it's a great idea. Olga said more advocacy is needed, and all. And what I could do is I could follow up with members of the CSC offline as well, just to kind of gauge kind of their interest in supporting in that manner, because there's a lot of different ways that the CSC could continue to elevate things that are in the SERP as on an as needed basis, and see if folks would be interested in kind of potentially developing that. Olga.
Yes, I have a question. I don't know. What other communities are part of the steering committee? Like, I know I'm from San Isidro, but is there other communities involved, or is it just like us in South Bay?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the International Border Community Steering Committee, it's San Isidro and Otay Mesa East. But there is another like AB 617 community, which is the Portside communities, which includes as I mentioned before, Barrio Logan, Logan Heights, Sherman Heights, and West National City. So those are the two communities that are participating in the Community Air Protection Program that CARB established. So those are the only two communities right now, or pods of communities in San Diego at the moment. But there are many communities throughout the state as well that are similar structure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mariana, that's a great question. The Nestor area, I'd have to take a look at a map that we have. I don't have it in front of me, but I could definitely look into that as well. I believe it is, but again, I need to take a look at the map for the boundaries that were drawn for this, but certainly does not exclude the ability for adjacent communities, right, to one, be a CSC member in this committee, and to be active in this advocacy as well. Cool. Well, Marissa, thank you so much, and we'd love to stay in communication with you all and get periodic updates in terms of the work that you all are doing, and just wanted to let you know that we have an open door to you and the Green Lining Institute to continue to share information, and then also opportunities to continue to be engaged in this effort, which the CSE has certainly been engaged the past year and a half on this issue in different ways. And so we certainly thank you, Jenny. It is part of the IBC map. And so certainly want to let you know that the door is open.
Yes, thank you so much. I know you just took in a lot of information. So yeah, if you have any questions or just like further comments, I dropped my email in the chat, and please feel free to email me directly too.
Awesome. Thanks, Marissa. I know we've gone through a lot of information in the past two presentations. I'm going to switch things up on the agenda a little bit and maybe kind of take a little bit of a breather / commercial break. I'm actually going to share with you all one of the videos that we've produced so far. It's about a minute and a half from the informal interviews we had with folks at the community steering committee meeting we had in person there at the Civic Center back in May. So I'm going to share my screen to share the little video. And one thing I want to share as well is we are this video is not going to show everyone who participated that day. It's really only going to highlight 4 people. I think 11 people provided their thoughts on air quality and traffic in San Isidro and Otay Mesa. And so we're in the process of developing more videos from the other folks who shared as well. So I just want to share that you're only going to maybe see about 4 or 5 people represented in this video. But we're working to develop more videos from the other folks who took the time to provide their perspectives and their experiences regarding air quality and traffic. I do want to share as well, this video has already been shared in spaces to continue to advocate for better infrastructure, transportation infrastructure specifically, at a SANDAG meeting last Friday. So it was one way to bring your voices, your stories into that space where those elected officials make decisions of where funding will go for different types of transportation infrastructure. So you all are already making an impact in different spaces by sharing your experiences and stories. So with that, I'm going to try to share my screen here. One second. So that you all can see the first video. Again, hopefully the next time we meet, I'll be able to share additional videos as well, but this is the only one that's been developed so far. And special thanks to everyone who has shared. Alrighty. Can you all see my screen okay? It should be like a black screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Yo soy residente de San Diego Sur.
Oops.
Minuto.
Let me start all over here. Here we go.
Yo soy residente de San Diego Sur. A 5 minutos del freeway, a 5 minutos de la frontera. Lo que es la frontera, el tráfico es muy pesado y la contaminación.
Let me pause it and start all over to give it a little bit of chance to download while we're here. 1 second. I apologize about that. Okay, here we go.
Yo soy residente de San Diego Sur. A 5 minutos del freeway, a 5 minutos de la frontera. Lo que es la frontera, el tráfico es muy pesado y la contaminación pues nos está afectando a la población, incluyéndome mi familia, en lo personal y mi hija, las dos ya tenemos asma.
Y hemos sabido que mucha gente por el mismo problema padece asma. Me gustaría que hicieran algo al respecto con el tráfico que se hace para entrar y salir de Estados Unidos, porque esa contaminación de aire.
Yo vivo aquí y he conocido algunos problemas que hay aquí en San Isidro. Uno de los principales sería la contaminación del aire, debido a que tenemos la cercanía con la frontera, con el cruce. Y estamos preocupados porque sea algo que dañe o perjudique la salud de niños y personas de la tercera edad.
La calidad del aire me importa muchísimo porque aquí vivimos, afecta toda la contaminación y todo lo que ocasiona el tráfico, causa muchas enfermedades, causa muchas alergias, inclusive mis hijos se han enfermado también por alergias. Y también me importa mucho la infraestructura, ya que está horrible. O sea, tienen que tomar más acción en todos esos aspectos.
Much here, but if you all have
Sorry here. The next video started. Sorry about the technical difficulties there. I hope you all were able to see it. What I want to do is also put the link in the chat box as well. You all did an amazing job sharing your experiences, your suggestions, your thoughts on what should be done and why. So more videos are to come. I just want to give a special yeah, thank you, Mariano. I probably need to do that. Just want to give a special thanks to everyone who participated back in May to share their stories. And if you didn't see yourself or hear your story up there and you did participate, don't worry. We are going to continue to work on those videos slowly, and feel free. I put the link in the chat box here. We'll also have an email probably early next week with all the links we've been sharing here today, where we can share that link with you too via email. So feel free to share with your friends and family the important work that you're doing here and why it's so impactful as well. So I see Maria, I see who else was in the video here today. Wendy was in the video as well. Maricela as well. I may be missing someone as well, but thank you, Maria as well. But thank you all for participating. Love to hear folks' thoughts. I'm seeing in the chat a lot of applause from Olga, and very powerful. Thank you from Jenny. So yeah, love to see if folks have any thoughts on the videos. Thank you, Wendy. Yeah. En María, gracias a ustedes que nos permiten participar. So thank you to everyone who allowed us to participate. Absolutely, thank you, Maria, for participating. So again, we'll make sure to share that link in an email to you all as well, so you can continue to share with friends and family in your community the important work that you're doing as well. All right, so we're going to transition, and I think what I may do, just depending upon how long this conversation goes, we might need to table one of our agenda items for the following time we get together, and I think that's okay, but I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to hear a presentation, and it's actually a video presentation. Hopefully my video is okay, and it'll be actually in Spanish, about a proposed update to a rule regarding natural gas furnaces. Oftentimes furnaces are in homes or businesses, and act as a heat source. They many of them operate off of natural gas. And we know that natural gas is one source of air pollution, also a contributor to climate change as well. And so the Air Pollution Control Board is in the process of updating their rules. And part of that process is they're doing community outreach throughout the community to hear from people in terms of what the proposed rule will do, what that impact is, and then also answer any questions that folks might have regarding that rule. In the International Border Community Emission Reduction Program, there's not a specific strategy around natural gas furnaces. In the port side community emission reduction program, SERP, there actually is a strategy or conversation in the SERP there about that. So why are we bringing this presentation to this particular group, even though it's not directly in the SERP? The main reason is because it's something that could potentially impact you and your family in terms of if you do have a furnace as a heat source. This is something you'd want to know about as well as a potential as it rolls out, and also what are maybe some opportunities for resources to support with transition to cleaner equipment to help heat your home as well. So with that, I'm gonna share a link, or I apologize, I'm going to share a video. And it'll be in Spanish. And so I am challenging our interpreters today. They will be translating this video to English as we hear the presentation in Spanish. And then we have a couple of folks here today, Nick and Kathy from our rule development team, who are gracious to stay on and answer questions. And so I appreciate them being here today as well. Mariela, try to stop my camera. I will do that. You don't need to see my face while we're watching this video. So let me go ahead and do that. 1 second. Right, let me turn off my camera. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
All right, let me go ahead and press play, and hopefully the sound is loud enough.
Hola grupos interesados. El Distrito de Control de la Contaminación del Aire del Condado de San Diego se complace en informarles sobre posibles acciones futuras para reducir aún más las emisiones de los calefactores de gas natural en el Condado de San Diego. Los calefactores, también llamados hornos, queman gas natural para generar calor dentro de hogares, escuelas, oficinas y otros espacios interiores. El gas natural que los calefactores queman durante su uso generan óxidos de nitrógeno, también conocidos como NOx, el cual es un precursor del ozono al nivel del suelo. El ozono irrita los pulmones y puede provocar problemas de salud como dolores de cabeza, tos y dificultad para respirar. La reducción de las emisiones de NOx ayudará al Condado de San Diego a alcanzar el cumplimiento de los estándares estatales y federales del ozono, mejorará la salud pública y ayudará al distrito a lograr su visión de aire limpio para todos. Hay alrededor de 1.15 millones de calefactores en el condado de San Diego. Actualmente se estima que los calefactores utilizados en entornos residenciales y comerciales emiten alrededor de 400 toneladas de NOx cada año. La regla 69.6 es la regla local del distrito que regula los calefactores de gas natural en el condado de San Diego desde 1999. A diferencia de la mayoría de las reglas del distrito, donde el cumplimiento es responsabilidad del propietario u operador de la unidad de emisión, la regla 69.6 es una regla de punto de venta. Eso significa que los fabricantes, distribuidores, vendedores e instaladores de calefactores son responsables de asegurarse de que su producto cumpla con los requisitos de la regla 69.6 antes de su venta al usuario final. Para respaldar los compromisos incluidos en la Estrategia Regional de Calidad del Aire para el Ozono del 2022, así como en la acción C3 en el Plan de Reducción de Emisiones de la Comunidad Portuaria para evaluar las reglas existentes y considerar nuevas reglas, el distrito ahora está considerando enmendar la regla 69.6 para controlar aún más las emisiones de NOx de los calefactores. Estas enmiendas proponen reducir 256 toneladas de NOx por año de los calefactores, que resultaría en una disminución de 63% con respecto a las condiciones existentes del aire. Es posible que también los calefactores utilizados en casas prefabricadas y móviles que actualmente están exentos de la regla 69.6 tendrán que cumplir con los estándares de emisiones de NOx por primera vez. Los calefactores existentes en el condado de San Diego, excepto aquellos en casas móviles y prefabricadas, actualmente deben de cumplir con un estándar de 40 nanogramos de NOx por julio. Para lograr reducciones significativas de NOx, el distrito propondrá un requisito para el uso de calefactores de NOx ultra bajo que deben cumplir con un límite de 14 nanogramos de NOx por julio. Esto resultaría en una disminución de 65% aproximadamente. Este límite de emisiones propuesto es similar a los límites encontrados en otros distritos de aire en California, en específico el área de la Bahía, la Costa Sur y el Valle de San Joaquín. Actualmente, los calefactores en casas móviles y prefabricadas están exentos y no tienen que cumplir con ningún estándar de emisiones. Para lograr reducciones significativas de NOx, el distrito propondrá un requisito para el uso de calefactores con bajo contenido de NOx que deben cumplir con un límite de 40 nanogramos de NOx por julio. Este límite propuesto para casas móviles y prefabricadas ha sido requerido por otros distritos de aire en California, en específico el de la Costa Sur y el Valle de San Joaquín. Un calefactor NOx ultra bajo cuesta aproximadamente $500 más que un calefactor regular que cumple con los estándares existentes. El personal del distrito estima que el costo de las enmiendas propuestas es de aproximadamente $95 por libra de NOx reducida. El distrito cree que aunque hay diferencias marginales de costos incrementales por requerir calefactores NOx ultra bajos, los beneficios de salud logrados para las comunidades desfavorecidas y de bajos ingresos superarán estos costos. El distrito planea tentativamente llevar las enmiendas propuestas a la regla 69.6 a nuestra mesa directiva en noviembre de este año. Si se adoptan las enmiendas propuestas, los proveedores e instaladores de calefactores tendrán un periodo de 6 meses para realizar la transición a la venta e instalación de nuevos calefactores que cumplan con esta nueva regla. No es necesario reemplazar los calefactores existentes en residencias y operaciones comerciales que todavía funcionan bien hasta que el calefactor existente llegue al final de su vida útil. Hasta entonces se requerirá que el calefactor viejo sea reemplazado por un calefactor nuevo que cumpla con la regla 69.6. Aunque los propietarios de viviendas no son responsables de demostrar el cumplimiento de la regla 69.6, pueden consultar con el distrito para asegurarse de que el calefactor que planean comprar esté certificado por el distrito y cumple con los requisitos con la regla 69.6. El distrito evaluó el uso de calefactores eléctricos de cero emisiones como parte de las enmiendas propuestas. A través de esta evaluación, el distrito determinó lograr una cantidad significativa de reducciones de emisiones en el corto plazo de las enmiendas propuestas que consisten con las de la Junta de Recursos del Aire de California, también conocida como CARB. CARB está trabajando para resolver la complejidad, el alto costo y las posibles preocupaciones de equidad asociadas con la necesidad de electrodomésticos, especialmente para los residentes de comunidades desfavorecidas y de bajos ingresos. CARB también está desarrollando una regulación de aparatos de cero emisiones a nivel estatal para su adopción en el año 2025, que ayudará con los obstáculos de la adopción y proponer exigir que los calefactores estén electrificados y tengan cero emisiones empezando en el año 2030. Los calefactores eléctricos pueden costar entre $3,000 y $30,000 más que los calefactores tradicionales, dependiendo si se necesitan actualizaciones para el sistema como el panel eléctrico. Debido a estos altos costos, el distrito del área de la bahía ha adoptado una regulación que con requisitos para calefactores eléctricos empezando en el 2029 para lograr reducciones de emisiones significativas y necesarias para mejorar rápidamente la salud pública. Mientras tanto, el distrito del área de la bahía, así como el distrito de la costa sur y el valle de San Joaquín, actualmente exigen un límite de 14 nanogramos de julio, el cual es consistente con las enmiendas propuestas por el distrito. El distrito anima a todos a considerar instalar calentadores eléctricos ahora mismo. Actualmente existen incentivos como la Ley de Reducción de la Inflación y los reembolsos Tech Clean California que pueden ayudar con la compra de un nuevo calefactor eléctrico. Combinados, ambos reembolsos pueden proporcionar hasta $3,000 en ahorros. El distrito ha estado participando en juntas con CARB y en los grupos de trabajo de cero emisiones de la costa sur para garantizar que el condado de San Diego esté listo para cuando se implementen las regulaciones estatales de cero emisiones. El distrito convocará un taller público virtual el 18 de junio.
I'm going to pause it there. I know it was a little bit fast, and so I also have the video in English as well that I could put in the slide deck as well. But I did want to show the video in Spanish. The APCD Rural Development Team put the video together in both English and Spanish, just because that the majority of community members speak Spanish here, so I wanted to show and uplift that video. But love to hear from folks if folks have any questions on the proposed rule. And I was the next part of the section, it was inviting people to a community meeting. That meeting took place actually last week, but there's still an opportunity to provide feedback on this rule up to July 2nd, which is next week. And I'll put information in the chat box also of who you could connect with to provide additional questions and information regarding this particular rule, and where you can find both the videos in English and Spanish for this proposed rule. But yeah, just wanted to open up to folks and see if folks had any questions or comments regarding the proposed rule update. Any questions or comments? This presentation was also given at the CSC meeting last night as well. And folks had a number of questions regarding programs to support residents with the transition. But I see, Olga, your hand is up.
Do you have a video in Spanish or working in the Spanish one? I mean, in English one?
We do, and I just put a link in the chat box where, let me actually go back here, where we have the video in English. I'll put the video in English specifically in the chat box right now.
Thank you.
Yep. And it's there in English. Nicolas.
Thanks for the presentation. I thought the video was really good. I guess has there been any kind of pushback from like manufacturers and stuff in San Diego, or folks that are like that sell these things that have kind of like, I don't know, raised concerns or issues? It sounds like a really important and good rule that'll improve air quality. I'm just wondering if there's any pushback.
Yeah, I'll actually hand that question off to Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Shalom. Yeah, hi, Nicholas. In regards to your question, if there's been any pushback from manufacturers or industry on this, at this point, we haven't really heard any. We had a public workshop, as the video noted, on June 18th. We did have some HVAC installers, I believe a couple of manufacturers on the line. Didn't really hear anything on that in that forum. And as Shalem mentioned, we had our Portside meeting last night and didn't really hear anything on that front. We do have our comment period still open through July 2nd. So, you know, we never know if there will be pushback or not, but and comments will usually come right at the very end. So, you know, it remains to be seen on that front. But up to date, I don't think we've heard any from industry.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick. And I see a comment in the chat box. Can this group get invited for, you know, these meetings too? And absolutely, I think before the meeting, a couple weeks before the meeting, we sent out a notice through the International Border Committee listserv, letting people know about this meeting. And we'll continue to, as other rules are being updated or developed, even if they're not directly related to a particular strategy in the STRIP, we'll continue to share that information with folks in this group as well. But as Nick mentioned, the comment period is still open as well, if folks have any questions or comments on this particular rule. Any other questions or comments? I apologize, the video was a little bit fast for the interpretation into English, but we do have this exact video with the exact content in English as well that I put in the chat box for folks to review if they'd like.
If I could add one additional item, the video mentioned that we did have the workshop, and I might drop the link into the chat of that particular workshop, in case anybody has any interest in reviewing it. It wasn't a long workshop, but the presentation also got into some additional detail about our proposal. If anybody would like to review it, they can. I don't think the recording ended up going into Spanish, unfortunately, but we do have at least the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, up on our website, as well as the recording. So if that's of interest to anybody, I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat in a second here.
Thank you so much, Nick. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. We are getting close to time, and I know that there's a couple of folks that have announcements to share, so I don't want to cut them short on that. So we're going to go ahead and table the conversation regarding the indirect source strategies and potential rule for the next time we're in this space together. Actually, Nick and his team, his colleague Randy, actually gave a presentation, a pretty thorough presentation back at our April meeting regarding the indirect source rule. There was a lot packed in there, and so I wanted to provide an opportunity for folks to continue to further unpack that information and provide an opportunity to continue to provide feedback on that. Nicholas Paul mentioned that a bit early, that potential rule a bit earlier this evening. Unfortunately, we're running short on time. We'll need to table that next time we have this convening. But before I share any closing comments and thoughts, I know that there were a few people who had some updates that they'd like to share. Andrea, would you like to start us off?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Juarez. I work with Carbon OCAP. I just wanted to let everyone know that the status of the SERP, I know this was brought up earlier in the conversation. The SERP status right now is that CARB staff has evaluated it to determine if it meets the minimum criteria established by state law and Blueprint 2.0. And we have posted our draft report on our webpage to give the public an opportunity to review and comment on that evaluation. The last date to provide any public comments is July 1st. And after consideration of any public comments that we receive, staff will submit the final report and the recommendation along with any public comments to our executive officer to review for approval of the SERP. So I'll go ahead and add the link in the chat where you can find the draft staff report and also the page where you can provide any public comment if you need to. And lastly, I just wanted to say that this is a huge milestone for your community, and I just want to commend the Air District and the CSC for working together and completing this goal, because it's a lot of work. You put in a lot of time and effort. So great job.
Thank you, Andrea. Are there any public comments? Any announcements? Any updates folks would like to share? Mariano.
This is just related to some of the data that's on the website. I was curious if there was a reason that the San Isidro Air Quality Monitor down at the fire station doesn't show up on the map.
That's a great question. I think we have David Soderman here who may be able to answer that question.
Hi, what map are you referring to? Sorry, I was.
The Air Vision map that's on the main SDAPCD website, Air Quality Map.
Okay, I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah.
If
It also
it's
doesn't show up in the daily report. So I was kind of curious why certain reports show it and some just don't seem, it doesn't seem consistent. So
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that. Because it should be in there.
yeah, I see it listed on the EPA website, and I know somehow the EPA is getting it from you guys. So I was just wondering why there's some inconsistencies there.
Yeah, it's a fairly new site, and so that might have been an overlooked to make sure that we had that updated. I know we're not measuring ozone at that site, so if it's a map for ozone, it wouldn't it wouldn't show up because we're not collecting ozone data at that site. But for PM 2.5, we are, and so it should show up for the AQI for PM 2.5. So yeah, I'll definitely look into it and ask my team to investigate that and correct that.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Mariana, for bringing that up. Want to see if there's any other announcements. I know that Casa Familiar has a big event coming up this Saturday. Want to see, I don't know if Alejandro is still on it, but want to see if you wanted to share a little bit about that, Alejandro.
Sure. So we're having our annual fundraiser this Saturday. It's a 5K walk, 10K run. You can register on our casafamiliar.org website. You can go to events and it'll take you to the registering page. But also you can register the day of. The event check-in starts at 6:30. It's right next to it's inside Las Americas, right next to the smaller Ross and in between the Tommy Hilfiger. I can't pronounce that last. But the Tommy and Las Americas. And yeah, it's our annual fundraiser. The funding is going to our promotoras program, going to our senior services and our youth services.
Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you. And I put the link to that event in the chat box. I encourage people to come on out. My son and I did the 5K walk. We were the very, very, very last people to come in. But it was a lot of fun. And actually the San Diego Air Pollution Control District is a sponsor this year again, and we'll have a booth. And so we hope to connect with folks there in person. Lauren, David, and I will be there and be able to hopefully be able to see you all in person as well. I see Melinda.
There you go. Sorry, I'm having troubles with my computer. I just wanted to ask a question, Alejandro. If you aren't able to participate, but you'd like to donate, is there a way on the website to do that?
Yeah, I think in our main website, and let me just confirm right now, you're able to donate. So I can definitely put that in the chat before this call ends.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alejandro. I wanted to take a moment. I'm going to share my screen again. Hopefully I'm making people dizzy with my screen sharing. Good. So we have something exciting planned. Let's see. Scroll through all my slides. There we go. We have something exciting planned. Actually, the next CSE meeting, it was originally scheduled to be virtual, but our next CSE meeting is going to be an in-person event. And we're going to have an opportunity to view an amazing play that was locally produced called Somos Aire. It's going to be at the El Salon Theater. And so actually the San Diego Air Pollution Control District is sponsoring this particular showing. And so we wanted to take a moment to invite you all to this special performance. Actually David on our team saw this play a couple of weeks ago, and so I wanted to see if David's available to share more information about the story and the importance for this particular group as well.
Hi, Shalem. Yes, thank you. And I want to give props to Alejandro and the Casa team for working with the producers of the play, because it really walks through from the perspective of a community and a family, what they have to deal with when one of their family members has issues, respiratory issues, and it moves really nice through the story to present the information that you all have been working on, which is, with air monitoring. And so it's really, really awesome play, funny, serious, right? But also gets you thinking about, the awesome work that the community's been doing around this. So, so it's really cool. And I'm excited that you all are going to get to see it.
Yeah, thank you, David, for providing that information. Yes, Jenny, tomorrow morning or tomorrow sometime, please expect an email from Lauren on our team, who will be sending out an email to each of you with a link where you can RSVP to attend. If you are a community CSC member, you will have the opportunity to have invite a friend or family member with you. Seating for the theater is a bit limited. I think we have a total of 67 seats. We hope to fill every single one of those seats. And so we might have a little bit of a waiting list, but you all will have first opportunity to claim a seat. And so this will be in place of our next CSC meeting. We'll be able to, as a community of residents, as public agency staff. So if Mariela, Zach, you all are certainly welcome. Jose, I don't know if Jose is here today from Caltrans. We want folks from the CSC who come in with a diversity of experiences, perspectives, positionalities in terms of our relationships with one another, to come and see this play. And then there's going to be a conversation after the play that we can have about what we just experienced together, and then how that relates to the work that we are collectively doing as well. I saw Alejandro put in the chat box that there may be a second screening of the play as well on July 20th. So if Alejandro, please let us know, because I'm thinking that there's probably going to be more people that want to see the play than we'll probably be able to have on July 17th. But so instead of meeting virtually on July 17th, we're going to get together, go to the community theater, watch this really beautiful play, and then engage in a conversation about air quality, about the important work that we all are doing together, and why it matters. So really excited, that really appreciative that Casas is putting this on, and really excited that the Air District is sponsoring this particular showing, and so also supporting local actors as well, which is really exciting. The play is going to be in English and Spanglish. We will have live simultaneous interpretation as well, so that folks can fully immerse themselves in the experience as well. So we're working with our interpreters to support in that as well. So the play is going to start sharply at 5 p.m. Doors are going to open at 4:30. We'll have some light snacks and refreshments. So please come a little bit early, so that you can get a good seat and you can get some snacks before the play gets started, because the play will be starting sharply at 5. The actors are very popular actors, and they have a lot of other commitments that evening, and so we're trying to get started right on the dot. So again, expect an email from Lauren tomorrow sometime. In that email, it'll have more information that I shared with you about the play, a description about the play, and then it'll have a special link that you can click on to RSVP to say, hey, I'm going to go. I'm going to take this person with me, so that we can ensure that you get a seat. I hope to see you all there. And I think it's going to be a really beautiful and impactful experience, I think, for us all. I think theater is a space where we're able to see each other in different ways, and have conversations in different ways. Alejandro.
Yeah, it is a great play. I saw it as well, that performance, and I will be out of town, unfortunately, for the 17th, but I highly recommend that everybody on this call attend and watch the play.
Thank you, Alejandro. All right. Before we head out, I just want to see if there's any last updates or announcements that folks like to make. All right. Well, hope to see you all on Saturday at the Abrazo event. If not there, hope to see you all at the play on July 17th. I didn't mention this, but it's free. So you don't have to purchase your ticket. All you got to do is let us know that you will be attending. So it is a free event for you all. All right. Well, have a wonderful night, everyone. We'll be in touch. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.